Welcome to Sovereign Fire Studios, the podcast that ignites your love for God, His Word, and His work.
You won't believe how many times I tried to do that. I bet you didn't know that I had the spiritual gift of robot voice and beatboxing, but now the cat's out of the bag. If you are a new listener, welcome to the show, and I love you. May grace and peace be multiplied to you and your household. If you like this content, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a 5-star rating and a written review wherever you listen. If you want more content, you can become a Patreon subscriber and you'll get access to early releases of these episodes. All of these episodes are released a week early. You'll get exclusive content and access to a show called War Stories, where I tell stories from my past life of Satan worshiping, drug dealing, trash manhood. And we also get a little more fringe, talking about topics like demonology, astral projection. I did an episode on DMT. I try to provide a lot of value there. If that sounds intriguing to you, become a patron. It's $5 a month. That's the price of one single egg in this economy. So don't be silly, you little silly head. Go give me your money and make this show possible. And if you've been helped by the content, you want to give encouragement, you want to reach me in some way to suggest a topic or a guest, or you want to send me hate mail, you can do that at sovereignfirestudios@gmail.com. You can also give a one-time gift on Venmo at Sovereign Fire Studios. I'm so glad that you're here. Enjoy this episode.
My uncle shot through the windows of the house into the bed where he thought we were sleeping, and he burned the house down. And so at 15 years old, I became a drug dealer. 98, my brother died. I OD'd. I had a brother OD. 1999, my mom died. In 2000, my brother shot my other brother. And so this Bible is in my cell, and it said free on the inside. I had a pair of handcuffs on it, broken. And so I opened it up. I wanted to know what Jesus did with bad guys. I got on my knees and I said, God, use me like the drugs used me and give me a purpose.
We've got an exciting show for you today with John Stroup, talking about his life and his ministry. John was once a dope addicted homeless man before God gave him a new life. And John is now the executive director of Freeway Ministries, a ministry that's near and dear to my heart, a ministry that impacted me when I was in addiction. Freeway's mission is to reach the hardest to reach, one broken life at a time. John is an author and the host of a podcast. One Broken Life is the name. John, first, how are you? And then tell the listener a little bit about yourself, man.
Well, I'm doing great. Personally, we're a family of 5. We're a blended family. And so my wife, Charla, is my best friend. She's here in the office 2 days a week. She oversees our child care, and we have 3 women's homes, and so she oversees those. I have a son named Keith, who I was a single dad a year out of prison. I got him when he was 2.5, and so now he's almost 17. My wife and I met when he was 4. She had a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old, and then we adopted a baby, and so we are from 30 years old to 4 years old. And
wow.
So
that's
my
awesome.
son Chase, who Charlotte brought into my life, my wife when he was 13, is now 24, and he's on staff at Crossway Baptist Church. And then my daughter Ashlyn, who was a bonus child for me too when she was 18, is a school teacher in Savannah. Keith's still trying to figure it out. He's 16 years old. And then my 4-year-old daughter Zenley. I serve at Freeway Ministries. I've been doing this for almost 13 years, and I'm having a great time doing what God's called me to do.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I love the story of the blended family. We'll talk a little bit about your adoption, because I just think that's such an amazing story of God's providence in your life. Would you describe for us what does Freeway Ministries do? What are you all about?
So we have two things that our focus is narrow. I am a ministry planter. And so I believe the heartbeat of Jesus is missions, evangelism, and discipleship through the local church. If you miss one of those things, you're not doing it right, in my opinion. A local church should have those 3 things as the heartbeat of Jesus. And so that's what we do. We are a local church ministry. And so I plant ministries alongside local churches to reach a certain people group through missions. So we create missionaries out of church members by planting an outreach alongside a local church that goes after a people group. And so this people group is a subculture within a culture.
Yeah.
They're in every city and every town in America. I believe it's domestic terrorism. It is people who struggle with addiction, crime, and poverty. And, generational, many times, a generational addiction, crime, and poverty, which basically means everyone they've ever known through the history of their family has been poor, drug addict, and a criminal. And so we reach these people through an outreach. We feed them evangelism. We feed them, bust them in, share the gospel with them, watch their kids. We do what church does. We do it on a Saturday night, and then we give invitations. I believe in that. I believe people don't need to have an invitation to be saved and trust Christ. That's not how it works. I got saved in a prison cell, but when God's conviction is on you from preaching the Word of God and the Holy Spirit is stirring your heart, I believe you should have somebody there to counsel you. And so we give them a chance to meet with someone to talk about the Lord. And then at the end of the night, we say, if you don't have a home church, we want to invite you to, and we plug them into a local church. And so every Freeway ministry has a partner church. And so that's one aspect. And then so when we plant the ministry, 6 months to a year, we open a residential home called the Discipleship House. And the Discipleship House is just that. It's a 1 year long discipleship, live-in discipleship home where they learn how to live. They're matured up in the Lord. They're in a local church. They're being mentored by church men and women, and they join that local church. And within a year of that, when they graduate the year of the program, our statistics are 90 to 95% of those people don't go back to drugs or crime.
Wow.
And
if they finish the program, you're saying?
Yeah, those who successfully complete the program.
Yeah.
And so, we have 12 partner churches today. We're in 5 states. We've been in South Africa for 7 years. And so it's a model that will work in any city and town in America. So.
Wow. That is amazing. I'm interested in how you came to know the Lord, but I want to start kind of at the beginning. Like, what was your childhood like? I know you know the phrase, like, you're either born in or sworn in. I was one that was sworn in. Like, my family was broken. I came from a broken home, but like, my dad wasn't a criminal. So tell me how you became an addict and what that was like.
I was raised by a single mom. I was born an uncle. So basically what that means is I had 4 brothers and sisters, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, actually 2 that I knew really well. And all of them were old enough to be my moms and dads. Okay. And so my family's from North St. Louis and Missouri. And so when I was born, my brother committed a murder, and my mom moved us. My dad died when I was 2. My mom moved me and her from St. Louis to Perryville, Missouri, which is in the Boo Hill. She had a mom there, her mom, biological mother. Basically, my mom was disowned because she got pregnant when she was 15, and she was a sharecropper. She picked cotton for 5 cents a pound and pregnant. And so I really never had any kind of relationship with her biological family. But her mom had a house, so my grandmother, and my mom moved us there, me and her. I was in 2nd grade. And so I grew up in prison visiting rooms. And so one brother would be in one prison and another brother would be in another prison. And so my brother, who was in prison for murder, was in the old maximum security prison in Jeff City, Missouri. They called it the Walls. So my mom was feuding with an uncle of mine, Bob, who's dead now. He killed himself, and they lived next door to each other. And I didn't really understand all this at the time, but my mom put pillows in the bed and blankets to make it look like we were there. And she took me to Jeff City to go on a prison visit from the Boot Hill, which is a very, 2-3 hour drive. And we went to visit my brother in prison. And when we got out of the prison visit, my mom called her mom to check on things.
Mm-hmm.
So there must have been something going on, a feud or something. And my grandmother was just very distraught. And she said, "Oh, you're alive. You're alive. I thought you were dead. Bob said he killed you." And so my uncle shot through the windows of the house into the bed where he thought we were sleeping, and he burned the house down.
Holy
He
smoke,
called
bro.
he called my grandma and said, "Mom and John are dead. I killed him." And he disappeared in the woods. They had to put him in a psych ward. I mean, all this stuff. And so my mom started her life over in Jeff City, Missouri, on a prison visit with a second grader in the 80s. And so before the GoFundMe, before the internet, before all these things, and we lived in the projects.
Yeah.
In a place called Chocolate City is what the nickname of the place we lived. And so that's how my mom started her life over. Well, my mom got a job as a waitress at this place called the Hen House, and she also was a bartender at a biker bar called the Jungle.
Mm.
She didn't have a babysitter, so guess where I sat?
The jungle.
I was on the bar stool.
Yeah.
And I was raised on the bar stool of a biker bar, and I was raised in the prison visiting rooms, and so the masculine men in my life were gangsters and drug dealers, and so that's kind of the culture I come from. Isaiah said, "Woe to those who call good evil and evil good,
Mm-hmm.
who put light for darkness and darkness for light, sweet for bitter and bitter for sweet, who are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight." And so, that's how I was raised. I was raised with a criminal mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised not to respect authority.
Right.
The right thing was not to answer the door when the police came.
Right. Yeah.
That was that's my culture.
Wow, man. Yeah. And from such a young age, that's it's incredible how much you soak up as a little kid, and those masculine influences in your life were just, where they were discipling you from that time. You as a kid, you watch all of the male figures you have in your life. Tell me about, like, when was the first time you actually used dope or something? When was the first time you got high?
I can't really. No, there's no telling how young or how old I was when I tried something. My culture, you let the kids drink beer.
Mm-hmm.
You blow marijuana in their face while they're sleeping in the crib to help them sleep. I mean, that's just the culture I come from. And so when I really became addicted to drugs, it was before I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
I was a kid. There's things I said I would never do. I said I would never use hard drugs. This and that. I watched my brothers, just one brother in particular who's a homeless man right now and wants to live a homeless lifestyle. But, I watched what drugs did to him in his life, hard drugs.
Yeah.
And so my mom and I, we were crime partners. And so, my mom came to me with 2 checks. So disability, Social Security check.
Mm-hmm.
And she, on the other hand, she had the bills, and the bills didn't match the checks.
Right.
And so she said, we have to do something. And so at 15 years old, I became a drug dealer. And so my mom would give me the money. I'd go buy the drugs, and then I'd sell the drugs, and then she would manage the money.
And you were 15 when you started this?
Yeah.
What kind of drugs were you selling?
Just marijuana.
Okay.
But I remember when I was 15, before I could even get a license, I would drive from Jeff City, Missouri to East St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah.
To get pounds of weed from family members. And, and I wasn't even old enough to drive a car.
Wow.
And that's what we did. And when I was 16, I quit school.
Yep.
And the bills got paid, and so I was able to buy a car. I was able to pay the bills. Now, I'm not claiming I was some big drug dealer, because I wasn't. I knew them all.
Right.
I could have been, but I just wasn't good at it, And so, but we survived, my mom and I, and then it went from, and I don't know how far you want me to go into this, but
as far as you want, man.
She she died in 1999. 98, my brother died. OD'd. I had a brother OD. He was 30. In 1999, my mom died. And then in 2000, my brother shot my other brother. And so I went from a drug dealer. My life fell apart when my mom died. She's my best friend. And I was by then I'm selling cocaine, and by then I'm club hopping. I'm a little older, early 20s,
Right.
chasing women.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my mom passed away in the hospital, I wasn't there. I was coping through sex and drugs and this and that. And I just didn't care anymore. And so I became homeless. And so I went from I would talk bad to drug addicts, people who did hard drugs,
Mm-hmm.
people who smoked crack. I'd sell them crack and I would just call them crackhead.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any respect for them as a human being. I showed them no dignity. I was very cruel. And so, I became that person. And
Yeah.
so I went from a drug dealer to a homeless drug addict to a junkie who would have sold his soul for a shot of methamphetamines.
Yeah.
And so from my early 20s till I was 30 years old, I was what I call a creature of the night.
Wow. So you were actually living on the street at that time?
Absolutely. I've always been a people person.
Yeah.
Just have an ability in my life that I think people are interesting. I'm a people watcher. I just like people. I like their stories. I like to get to know them. I'm a guy who just has that personality.
Yeah.
And so I never slept on the street. I would sleep on your couch.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I know what you mean.
You would let me come stay at your house,
Yeah.
and I would manipulate you
Yeah.
and get what I wanted from you, and then I would have to leave, and then by then I know all your friends, and I'm sleeping on their couches and hustling them, and you know how that life goes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
But you were homeless. I mean, you didn't have a place to call your own. You were just hopping from one place to another.
I didn't even have a change of clothes. I didn't even
Wow.
have a cell phone. I mean, I'd buy one of them pay-as-you-go phones, and then I'd get strung out and trade it for dope, and then I'd have to go get it, start over from nothing. I'd rob the drug dealers. I wasn't welcomed at the dope house. I mean, it's a miracle that I haven't been killed on the street, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, a question to kind of follow that up, because immediately where my mind goes is like, what is the most dangerous situation you've been in? Because you've been around a lot of dangerous people. I assume you've probably been jumped and things like that.
Before Christ and after Christ, I mean, I think I've been around more dangerous people since I've been a Christian than before.
Praise God. Yeah.
I can tell you so many stories. I mean, I don't really go into war stories too much, but I can tell you there was a time when I was homeless, and when you go from the drug dealer to the dope fiend, you got all the connections because you were raised with all the dope men,
Right.
and so you can get better deals and all that. And so I went to this guy's house that was having a party that I came up with and stuff, and I was sitting at the house and just filthy. Only one that was a dope fiend there. The only one with track marks. Everybody else had money and rims and cars and all that. And here I am, and just drinking and snorting cocaine and all of a sudden the police shoot a percussion grenade through the window, and they come in the house, and they're after the people that live there, and they're after people. They know who's there, and I'm not supposed to be there. I just showed up.
Right.
They let everybody go that didn't have drugs on them or drugs in their sight and didn't live in the house. They let them all go except for me and the people who live there.
Why not you?
So by this, because they hated me. And there was a cop that had and now let me just tell you this. I work with law enforcement. I work with police. I work with the judicial system, judges,
Right.
Hand in hand. I have a respect for authority when I tell you this, but
Yes.
there was an officer that did not like me. He was a lieutenant, and me and him went round and around the streets, and so they put me in this. They put us all in the jail, and they go from cell to cell to question everyone. They let them out, and the people are going with them to be questioned. Well, I was pretty hardcore. I wouldn't even come out of my holding cell.
Yeah.
I'm not coming out. I'm not talking to you. I have nothing to say. I want a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. And so, so then they let everybody out of the cells at the same time and me. And this lieutenant pats me on the back and says, "Thanks for the information. You're free to go."
Oh no.
In front of like 6 huge drug dealers. And I'm homeless on the street.
Dude, didn't he?
Oh,
That was a death sentence. How could he? That is so illegal for him to do that.
yeah, he tried to get me killed.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so for 2 years on the street, you know, I still was homeless, still on the street. And by God's grace, no one ever touched me. You know, I was a skinny, frail drug addict. And, you know, the discovery always comes out and they know who told on them and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they didn't know then. They fell for it, you know.
Right. Right.
So,
Wow.
anyways, and then I went to Cape Town, South Africa, and went to the leader of the Mongrel gang. His name's Roland the Mongrel. And if you look up the most dangerous prisoners in the world, you'll see John Mongrel is or has been. He's dead now, but he was the leader of the Mongrel gang, over 2,000 gangsters in South African prison. But anyways, I met the guy who took his place, and I sat in his apartment and shared the gospel with him and prayed with
Wow.
him. And they try to kill him every week. He can't even come outside. There's bullet holes all in the windows. And the pastor took me over there and they sat me down in front of this window. And then he pulled the curtain back and showed me last week where the bullets had come through that window. And they tried to kill me. And that was a moment. I mean, he's got bodyguards everywhere, and everybody's on meth. And he's talking this Sabella, which Sabella is a prison language that only prisoners know in Cape Town. And
Wow.
and they're talking Sabella and screaming and yelling. And, you know, I thought this may be it for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't die. I'm still here. So
Wow. What is it? The wicked flees, though no man pursues him, but the righteous shall be bold as lions. You know, it's like when Paul gets beat up and stoned and he's dead. The disciples all gather around him and he's raised to life. And then he goes right back into town to share the gospel again. I'll sometimes ask guests for their, for war stories or for the some of the nitty gritty details, because one, just to see how you had a death sentence. I mean, you were dead in your sin already, but that guy he put basically a hit on you. And
he tried to get me killed.
just to see you standing still here today, it's a testament to God's faithfulness, man. So what was rock bottom for you? What was your rock bottom like, and how did you get sober?
Well, I just want to say that I wasn't brave and I wasn't bold and I wasn't a hero of any kind. I was scared to death. And in my heart, it was only God's grace that allowed me to make it through those things. And I believe God's sovereign plan for my life was before I was born.
Yeah.
Before he formed me in my mother's womb, he knew me and he knew what I was going to be and what God was going to do with my life. And he's got a great sense of humor, in my opinion. And that's part of the reason I'm a preacher today. But for me, I wrote a book called Stop Loving Your Kids to Death. And it's a book on enabling. Basically, it's just the idea of how to help somebody on drugs and what do you do, what don't you do? It's stop this, start that, stop loving them to death. And and in the book, and I'm not trying to plug my book, I'm no big time author or anything. It's just I wrote it as a resource to help people. But in it, I go through rock bottom, and rock bottom is not a place. Rock bottom is a state of mind, and that's key to understanding rock bottom. Is that because if rock bottom is a place, then people who go through these traumatic events that almost cost their life will never, ever change, because that's as bad as it could possibly be, and it didn't change them. So when you think rock bottom is a place, you have to realize it's not a place. Rock bottom is a state of mind. It's when you finally say, Luke chapter 15, I will go back to my Father. I will climb out of this pig pen, and I will say, I've sinned against you, heaven and earth. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. And you get up, right? And so that's the moment. And so rock bottom for me came in a prison cell. being the homeless guy, being the drug addict, being a shell of a man, being ashamed to look in the mirror,
Mm.
being scared, having no courage, people talking crazy to me and me not even saying nothing back to them because all I cared about was drugs and getting high and didn't even want to live. I mean, having sex with prostitutes, sharing needles with whoever. I mean, I didn't care, man. And God and that guy, I went to prison in 2008 for selling drugs in a school zone. Crazy story. It wasn't mine. I was with a drug dealer. It was a prostitute's house, and his girlfriend didn't want him going in. I had warrants for my arrest. It's broad daylight. They're fighting in the car. I didn't want to go to jail, so I said, "Give it to me. I'll take it to her." And she was setting him up, and she got me.
Oh,
And I
wow.
didn't tell on him. So
Yeah.
I went to prison. He didn't even send me a thank you card, you know. So, but that's the street life. But
Yeah, it
anyway,
is.
so I went to prison in 2008, and I was in Fulton, Missouri, and I've read the Bible before. I've been in a homeless shelter before. I had been in a church, because you had to go to church to live in a homeless shelter type thing. But I was not a Christian.
Okay.
And I thought I was. I would have said I was, jailhouse stuff. But I can't tell you how many hundreds of days I did in county jail, and I'd go right back out. And in jail, I'd press people and this and that, do things. I mean, I wasn't a Christian,
Yeah.
and so I went to prison, and there was a Bible. I'll show it to you.
Yeah, show it, man.
So this is my prison Bible, and it's just a testimony of the power of God. It's a free on the inside prison Bible. I wanted to know what Jesus did with bad guys. And so there's this Bible. Now I'm living on $5 a month. I had no GED. I owed victims comp fees for probation and parole and all this and that. And so they give you what's called state tip in prison. And it's basically prison welfare for people who don't have anything, indigent people. And so at the time it was $7.50. Well, if you owe state fees you didn't pay, then they take $2.50 a month off your state tip. If you don't have a GED, it's lower. And so for me, I got $5 a month. And for $5 a month, I could buy 5 postage stamps, a stick of deodorant, and a stick of toothpaste, and a bag of Keefy coffee. And so I had nothing, okay? I didn't even have enough money to wash my hair with shampoo. I had nobody to call. I never made a phone call from prison once. I never had a prison visit.
And how long were you there?
I'm alone. 18 months on a 5-year sentence. And so I'm alone with Jacob, like Jacob with a rock for a pillow, okay? And here's the Bible. And so this Bible is in my cell. And it said free on the inside. I had a pair of handcuffs on it, broken. And so I opened it up. I wanted to know what Jesus did with bad guys. And I realized I found in Romans chapter 3, it says there's none good, no, not one. And I thought, wow, there's none good. And so we're all bad. Well, what could God use a man like me? And I began to search the scriptures. The only book I ever read up to that moment was the Bible. And I devoured the thing. I mean, you can see my Bible has no front and it has no back. It has no bind. It used to be held together with a sticker from my speed stick deodorant, I fell in love with God's word. And I realized as I read the Bible, not only could God use a man like me, but I was a poster child for Christianity.
Yeah, come on.
That he called people just like me. And I was perfect for Jesus. And so I got on my knees and I said, God, use me like the drugs used me and give me a purpose. If you will use me and you will give me a purpose, I'll serve you the rest of my life. And I surrendered my life to Jesus in 2008 in June in a dirty prison cell. And that's when I became a Christian.
Wow. That's amazing, man. So you read the Bible, you see the good news, which it is bad news. I mean, that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. There's not one righteous, not one. That's scary, bad news. But for somebody who knows that they are evil and corrupt, it levels the playing field. And then you get to receive the free gift of salvation and forgiveness of sins. That's an amazing part of your story, man. So there wasn't even somebody in there like walking through Romans Road with you or anything. You were just reading the Bible?
No, nobody was with me. It's great news to a bad guy, but it's terrible news to people who think they're good.
Yeah.
I tell church folks that all the time. I tell them take their halo off. It's crooked. It doesn't fit. And
Yeah.
so we have to all realize that we have to come to that. See, I came to the conclusion that I was messed up.
Mm-hmm.
They said, why are you sitting with those type of people, Jesus? And he said, because those who are sick need a physician.
Mm-hmm.
Those who don't know they're sick, they're not going to go to the hospital, and so for me, um, you know, I devoured the Bible. I read it back and forth. I took notes from it. I mean, I was salivating over it.
Mm-hmm.
I had hope. I had the hope of glory. I had purpose now. I had another chance. All I've ever wanted in my whole life was another life to live, another chance. And I never thought I'd get one, but I have one now.
Yeah.
And so I'm all in, man. I was ready, all in.
Yeah, praise God. That's awesome, man. So you eventually did get out of prison and you got married. Your wife now is ministry partner with you. Y'all wanted a child. Would you tell us about the process of like how was it blending your families? Because she had some older kids, and then how will you tell us about how you eventually adopted together?
My wife was a drug addict, and she got saved through the ministry. And so uh, I was praying for one of my guys in my Sunday school class or Bible fellowship class, life group, whatever you want to call it. His name was Shad, and he was a football coach, and his sister was a drug addict. And we just started Freeway, and I was explaining to him what to do. He's asking me questions, and I'm walking through this process of how to help her. And he's following my direction. And so he brings her to Freeway, and she gets saved. She surrenders her life to Jesus. And I was a single dad. I had been a single dad since I got custody of my son a year out of prison. He was 2.5. And so I got DNA tested in prison to see if I was this little boy's daddy. And when I got out of prison, I called the state, and they told me that I was. And so
Wow.
not ever having a father, having no idea how to be a father, I was terrified. He was rescued from a bad situation. I fought to get him, and I got him in 2010. I got out of prison in 2009. And so 2011, towards the end of 2011, we start Freeway. And it's me and Keith, and I have 2 other guys that helped me start Freeway, Rick and Mike. And it was them with me, and we were all together. And so, I began to pray for a wife, and Charlotte is my wife's name, but the ushers kept bringing her to sit by me and stuff, and I was scared of women. The number one cause for relapse is relationship.
Yeah.
Relationships cause more relapse than anything, so I'm scared, and I didn't trust myself. Very sexual, permissive my whole life, and so I didn't want to mess this up, you know what I mean? And so I would send had hymn books in the church. I would set them beside me and stuff, and just scared. And so they started bringing her to me, setting her by me, this and that. Well, one day I said, God, if you bring her again and set her by me, I'm going to ask her for coffee. And I did. And we got married. She went from a drug addict to a preacher's wife in 6 months.
Wow.
And which is something I would never recommend to anyone. But
Yeah.
we had no idea what we were doing. We had no experience. She had 2 teenagers that were highly upset with her, and I had a 4-year-old boy without a mom, and we blended them all together, and neither one of us knew what we were doing. And so I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
We fought for 3.5 years. Our marriage was horrible. I almost quit the ministry several times, and I called my pastor, and I wasn't hiding this. This was transparency. I didn't talk about it from the pulpit or humiliate her. We didn't fight and scream in public, but when we went home, it was war. Never physical, or anything. We never left each other. We were too stubborn. But she would go to her bedroom and cry, and I'd sit at the table, feel like a failure. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But we had a breakthrough 3.5 years into this thing. God redeemed our marriage. I call it revival in marriage. God showed me some things, and my problem was never Charlotte, and Charlotte's problem was never me. Our problem was always in the mirror. Anyway, we can't have children together. And so we've had abandoned babies. We had a girl in our program that she moved in, and we found out she was pregnant. She found out a week later. Well, we have a year-long program. You do the math, right? And so we told her, we will walk through this with you. And so my wife was in the living room with her. She moved in our home for 2 weeks, and then we raised the baby. And she graduated, and we kept the baby for almost 8 months. And that's when I knew I wanted to have another child.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was a felon.
Right.
Parsons, the governor, gave me a pardon 2 years ago, so I'm not a
Yeah.
felon anymore.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. But at the time, the state wouldn't let me foster. They said, you're never going to be able to adopt a child privately. It's just a waste of time.
Hmm.
All the Christian adoption agencies discouraged me.
Yeah.
They told me I couldn't do it. They wouldn't even do a home study for me.
Right.
So we began to pray, and my wife began to pray. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little pessimistic. And so I was preaching a revival meeting, which some people probably don't even know what that is anymore, but getting older, I guess. But it was a 3-day event where we call it Save Our City. So we invite the recovery community and the church to come together for 3 days for preaching, testimonies, worship. We have a awesome band come in and play, and we run about between 900 to 1,000 every night. It's just a cool event.
Oh yeah.
And so we're doing the Save Our City event. We're praying. Everybody knows. And my wife is praying for a little. We want a little girl, and my wife's praying for a little girl with my skin tone and who has my sense of humor and all these things. And I'm just like, I haven't been praying. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm just like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this girl walks in off of one of our buses because we have buses that go all over the city and pick people up. And she's homeless. She's got 2 trash bags to her name, and her name is Tiffany. And she walks in, and one of our greeters says, "Hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. How can I pray for you today?" And she said, "Well, I'm 7 months pregnant, and I'm looking for someone to adopt my baby," at the revival meeting. And so they take her to my wife because they know my wife's praying. And so she begins to tell my wife the story. She says, I'm on the street. I can't keep a kid. I've gone to all the adoption agencies, and I can't find a profile that fits. And I'm looking for somebody to adopt my little girl. She's biracial, and my wife's just listening. And so another girl who knew the homeless girl, her name is Anna, she said, "Tiffany, where have you been?" Anna's been with us for 12 years and, done really well. And Tiffany's explaining to her what, everything she told my wife. Anna tells my wife, "Did you tell her?" And Tiffany said, tell me what? And she said, "We're praying for a baby, a little girl." She said, "Who's we? I ain't just giving my baby to nobody." She's from the street. She ain't messing around. And she said, "Well, my husband's the one speaking tonight." And I began to introduce Welcome the Crowd. I don't know anything. I'm on the stage. This is going to scare some of my Baptist friends, but I'm just going to say it anyway. When the baby heard my voice, she leaped in the womb, okay? And there was like a supernatural thing that happened in her stomach when I spoke. And
Wow.
the girl ran outside. She runs outside, drops her clothes. She's freaked out. She smokes a cigarette. Now we're on Bible Baptist College University campus, which is very very conservative, independent Baptist organization, which they're swaying to that now. They're doing great. They're a great school. But we used her. So a 7-month pregnant girl smoking a cigarette outside the Bible Baptist College campus field house gym.
First time ever.
She comes in, she's crying, she's freaked out, she doesn't know what to say, she's not a Christian. She gets saved, okay? I don't know any of this. So I'm backstage with the band, blah, blah, blah. So I come off the stage. It'd been 3 long days. The next day was a Sunday. I'm driving to Illinois to preach at a church there. We're going home, just packed up our booth with our books and our Freeway stuff. And Charlotte looks over to me and she says, "I think we're having a baby." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So she tells me this story. And I'm like, "You need to guard your heart. You're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt." And so Sunday we go to this church in Illinois. I preach. We drive back to Springfield, which is a long drive. Charlotte's more spiritual than me. She's going to church Sunday night. I'm going home and sleeping. I can't, I'm exhausted. Tiffany's at church, the homeless girl. And Anna took her in and let her stay at her house. And Tiffany said, "God wants you to have my baby." And Charlotte, the next day, we took her out for dinner. And she tells us a story about how the baby leaped in her womb.
Wow.
And she just knows for a fact that we're supposed to have the baby. And I'm like, I'm still pessimistic, and I'm guarded,
Mm-hmm.
And so Tiffany ends up going to trucking school. We have a baby shower at the church. I hire a private lawyer. He said, I've done this for 13 years and I've never seen a felon privately adopt a baby that wasn't next to kin. The Missouri Baptist Children's Home, the Lutherans, all these different agencies won't do a home study for me. They won't even come do a home study for me. And I'm not trying to be mean. I love them people. I'm just telling you the truth. And
Yeah,
I was discouraged.
for sure.
5 organizations do a home study accepted by Greene County. One of them said yes. A lady named Janice, private company. And she read my book. So she comes in. She asked all these questions for a home study. I don't know if you've ever done a home study or not, but it's, have you ever had addiction in your family? Have you ever been convicted of crime? Have you ever done drugs? I've been molested. My wife's been molested. I mean, we have every answer is terrible. Like,
Yeah.
no. It's all bad.
Mm-hmm.
They separate our kids, ask them questions about us. I'm like, there's no way we're going to be able to get this baby.
Yeah.
And they deemed us excellent for adoption.
Wow, man.
And so we go to the hospital. They give us a private room. My wife cut the cord on the baby.
Mm.
The first person my daughter touched was my wife. They did skin on skin with Charlotte like she was the mom. Covered her up with a blanket. Put Zenly in the room with us. What's interesting is they're supposed to put the baby with the birth mom for 24 hours in her room to give her a chance to decide whether she wants to keep the baby. They didn't do that.
Wow.
They put Zenly in our room. We kept her for 3 days. She went home with us from the hospital, and we adopted Zenly, and it's been 4 years ago. And she looks like me. She's got my complexion. She smiles like me. She has the same facial expressions as I do, and you can't even tell she's not my baby.
Wow. That's incredible. God is so faithful, man. I have a little girl as well. She's 3 now, and I just know how precious the time is that I get to spend with her. And that kind of leads me to my next question. So, I mean, you hear about these fentanyl overdoses, man, like all over. It's all the time. There's overdoses, especially in Springfield, especially in like KC where I'm at. What is the cause of addiction? What is the underlying like biggest cause for people to run to drugs?
I wrote an article, and you can Google it. It doesn't say it's me, but it was a rhetoric paper. I wrote it against when I was in Luther Rice, I wrote it against the disease model of addiction doctors at the Mayo Clinic, and it's called the sin of addiction. I call it a disease. I call it a sin model.
Yeah.
I believe addiction is sin.
Yeah.
And it is the ultimate form of selfishness. And
Right.
what is sin? Sin is selfishness. I tell people, you may not have been an alcoholic, but you're a selfaholic. And so if you can understand selfishness, you can understand addiction. Addiction is the ultimate form of selfishness. You don't care about you. You don't care about your family. You don't care about your freedom. You don't care about your life. You don't care about your health. You don't care where you sleep. You don't care about your safety. All you care about is one thing, and that's that drug. And so it's bondage, man. I mean, addiction numbs you. Drugs are just that. They're a drug. And so it helps you not think about the things that are going on in your life. It's an easy fix. It doesn't take any discipline.
Yep.
It doesn't take any kind of work to do it. Anyone could be a drug addict. Anyone can relapse. It's evil. It's sin. So for me, the answer is pretty easy. It's a sin issue.
Yeah.
It's a heart issue.
That is so true. It's almost like I was talking with a brother about homosexuality and how that's kind of been redefined as less of a sin problem, more of an identity problem. It's an addiction is almost the same way where they medicalize it. They give you new terms for it. It's more socially acceptable. It's like you're a victim of it. You're not sinning against God. You're a victim of addiction or homosexuality or whatever. And that's a huge breakthrough when you realize this is me. I'm sinning against God. Yeah, there are things that contribute to it. I mean, John, you and I both know, like, you come from a broken home, you're more likely to have a broken home later on in life, or to fall into addiction or whatever. But I think it's really important what you said, that this is a sin problem. It's not purely a disease. It's not something that you can shove off and be like, well, I'm just always going to be this way. I can't help myself.
Well, we have to be careful with our terms. If you go to Webster Dictionary for truth, then Webster Dictionary says I'm a drug addict and I'll always be one.
Yeah.
Webster Dictionary says I'm a criminal because I committed a crime. And so I have to walk around with that label for the rest of my life according to this world.
Right.
And I'll tell you the truth is that I'm not a criminal.
Yeah.
I don't behave like one. I pay my taxes. I follow the law. I respect authority. So I have to make sure I think for myself.
Yeah.
And so when they compare addiction to asthma, the quote unquote professionals, and they say, they call it SUD, substance use disorder. And so, there's lots of grant money there, and you can get the government's puppet string. There's a lot of people who are in the recovery business, and they are grant chasers. And so wherever the money is, that's what they are. And that's not who I am today. We're a grassroots organization. We don't have government money. And so I can say what I want. And so for me, it's a cop-out. Everybody has stuff in their life that's caused them trauma. But what you do with that trauma and what you do with your life is a different story.
That's right.
I'm not a drug addict. I'm not a criminal. I don't act like one. My identity is not found in those things. My identity is found in Christ.
Yeah.
I'm a blood-bought, born-again Christian. And my purpose is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
That's right.
And so I know who I am, and I know what my purpose is.
That's so good, man. Okay. And so how can the church, regular folks maybe that don't have experience with drug addiction, or that they're not, streetwise or anything like that, how can we in the church reach those in our community who are, being ravaged by addiction, who come from broken homes, who have only known violence and crime? How can we better reach those around us like that, man?
Well, it depends on what kind of level you're talking about. There's a personal level, there's an evangelistic level, there's a missional level, there's a discipleship level. On a personal level, you have to be very discerning and careful. You can't just throw out your wisdom and safety for your family and do stupid, foolish things and put yourself in danger. But the only thing you can invest in a drug addict is something they can't trade for drugs, and that's instructions. And so we call that obedience-based discipleship, and I'm a firm believer in that. Jesus said, "Follow me." He would always test them, right? He would test them, and he'd say, "Well, why aren't you leaving me? Everybody else left me," and they said, "Where else we got to go?" You have the words of life, man. I'm following you, Jesus. He said, "Oh yeah, you're the real deal." And so we vet people. We have a vetting system. But so I invest in instructions. I tell them, I give them something to do, and then they do the work. And then when they do what I ask them to do, I give them some more. And I give them some more. And I give them some more. And that's how I know who's serious and who's not.
Right.
If you're not willing to do whatever it takes, you're not ready to be a disciple of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
On an evangelistic level, Billy Graham said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
People that come from the street have great discernment.
Mm-hmm.
They can spot a fake. They can spot a fake.
Right.
They know if you're fake. They know it.
Yeah.
They know if you're genuine because that's kept them alive, being able to read people.
Yeah.
Right. And so they know if you love them. And so you don't have to come from a drug addict background. Mm-hmm. You don't have to understand, all the street terminology. Number one, do you understand do you know how to love somebody? Love them. Number two, you understand sin? Then you can understand drug addiction. Yeah. Because addiction is sin. And so if you look at it on a sin level and take out the addiction and take out the alcoholism, take out the drug addiction, take out the medicated treatment, take all that out and just say, this is somebody who has a sin problem. Yeah. And I'm going to deal with it on a sin level. And I'm going to walk through life with them. I'm going to love them. I'm going to treat them just like I treat anyone else who's struggling with sin. And that's how you meet them on a personal level.
That's so good. Yeah, that is so good, man. Okay, so let's talk directly to the addict. Let's say somebody stumbled across this video because they have they see the word drugs in it or something. They're trying to get free. Let's say this person is hungry for freedom and they don't know where to turn. What would you say to the person who's watching this and is just looking for some kind of hope that there's, light, that there's another life?
Well, we have what the secular world doesn't have. We have hope. We have an opportunity to have a new life. 2 Corinthians 5:17, the old things pass away, behold, all things are new.
Yeah.
And so I can invest something in a drug addict that they can't get anywhere else. And I believe God can do in a moment what years of counseling can't do, what prisons can't do, what drugs can't do, what treatments can't do, treatment centers. My statement to anyone who's struggling with drugs is, one, depending on their level. So if they have it in their systems right now, if they're full of drugs and they're coming down, they need to go to detox, and they need to drink a glass of milk and eat a sandwich and go to sleep for a little bit, and get their mind right so they can understand what you're saying to them. Right. But my statement is always fully surrender to God. Come to God with the I'll do whatever it takes attitude.
Yeah.
Full surrender, and surrender to God like you surrender to your addiction. And my prayer was, Lord, use me like the drugs use me and give me a purpose. And so get into a program, surrender. Number one, meet with God, surrender to God.
Yeah.
Get on your face before God and cry out to him.
Yeah.
I always tell folks, sign a blank contract with God and let him fill it out.
That's right.
Say, here's my name. I'm all in. Whatever.
Yes. Whatever
you want to do. I am in. I am surrendered. Use me, Lord. And so surrender to God. Get plugged into some kind of a program somewhere where it's not your mom and your dad telling you what to do.
Yeah.
Or your buddy, and get underneath the authority of a local church and a pastor. Go to a healthy, Bible-believing, sound doctrine church.
Yeah.
And get discipled. If you're a man, go to the church and find them godly men in the church and say, tell me what to do. What do you do on Monday? What do you do on Tuesday?
Right.
And if no one's willing to walk with you, go to a different church.
That's good.
And let them pour into you and disciple you.
That is so good. Thank you for sharing that, John. And to the addict that's watching this and that is still kicking back and forth the idea of quitting drugs, I know how tiring it is, like to be an addict. I know it's unsatisfying. You know as well as I do, when you come down from whatever high you've been on, no matter how much you use, no matter who you have sex with, how often you're fulfilling those desires that you have in your flesh, it always leaves you more empty than you started out. It always leaves you more broken than you began. And it keeps you longer than you ever intended. You didn't wake up one day and say, I want to be a drug addict, or I want to be sexually broken. It's a slow fade, small steps at a time to where you are today. We plead with you, if you're watching this, turn to Christ. He's promised that he will receive whoever comes to him. He'll never cast you out. Unlike the drugs, he actually will satisfy you. He says, whoever believes in me will never thirst. Whoever comes to me will not hunger. He will satisfy you eternally and give you everlasting life. If you turn from your sin and you, like John said, you give him everything, all that you are, he promises that he will forgive your sins, that he'll give you everlasting life. And I'll see you in heaven if you do that. Super grateful to have you on, John. Last thing I want to do is some lightning round questions, if you're okay with that. So just short answers, short questions. Have you ever had any demonic experiences? You have?
I met a guy who had a demon outside the building. He touched a cup of coffee that was cool, and it started boiling from him touching it. And he took a drink. He said, "Oh, it's hot. It's smoking." I shared the gospel with him quickly, and he said, "I'm condemned already." I mean, it was demonic. So, yeah.
Wow. Did he run off?
No, I prayed for him. I prayed for him with my eyes open. Many demonic situations in the drug addiction ministry, but go ahead.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. So what is one promise of God that you've held on to the most over the years?
That's not fair. You're going to tell me one. Colossians 1:21-22. To you who were once alienated and enemies in your own mind by your own wicked works, now he is reconciled to present you unblameable and above reproach in his sight. And even when I'm an enemy in my own mind, even when people accuse me, people from my past, or even people in ministry, I'm above reproach and above accusation in his sight. And
Yes.
And that's a promise I preach and quote to myself quite a bit.
Praise God. Do you experience any temptation to return to drugs since you got out of prison, since you got saved?
No, to be honest with you, I don't. I don't miss anything about my old life.
Good.
I don't have any temptation to use drugs. Not that I couldn't relapse. Not
Sure.
that I couldn't. But if it wasn't for the grace of God, there I go. It's a humble surrender daily and a dependence on the grace of God that keeps me.
Well, I'm so thankful. John, thank you so much for coming on. How can people connect with you further? And do you have any projects you're working on right now?
You can contact me at John Stroup at freeway-ministries.org. You can visit our website at freeway-ministries.com. We do have lots of stuff going on. We are raising up missionaries, sending them out. We're always looking for sound churches that are more interested in seeing people saved and keeping their pews clean. And so we send our missionaries to their church and help them plant freeways in their community. So if there is a pastor or a church that feels like they have a need to reach our people group and they want a missionary, they could contact me about that. And then I have a book coming out May 1 called Time by the Brook. And it's a devotional / discipleship book. And basically, it's 13 weeks every day. Every week you read one chapter every day in the Bible. And so I basically teach people how I study, and I share messages that I built as I exegetically preach the Word of God. And I really feel like it's going to be something that you could take a new believer through. And when they're done, they know how to study the Bible, and they have a new, fresh zeal for the Word of God.
Sounds like an amazing discipleship tool. I know of a few relationships right now I could be using that for, so I look forward to getting it myself. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Until then, remember that God is sovereign, His Word is sufficient, and His Spirit is still moving.